So since that I have three experts on the stage with me, I will just start with questions like, improvised. First one, what's the killer app for blockchain? Because people say that Bitcoin is the killer app for blockchain. And also there are people saying AI, there are people saying IoT. So I wanted to ask you, what's the killer app for blockchain? But first, I would like to have a self-introduction of you guys.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. I'm Eimantas Tomkevicius. In blockchain, let's call it around 1 year. We are running our own ICO on 3D printing platform, and we also established the crypto economy organization based in Lithuania. So this is where I'm from. So, thank you.
Any question?
I believe ICO actually is the killer thing in blockchain because it's like .com, because somebody compares blockchain with internet. So I think ICO could be the .com bubble, which will bring people together because there is money involved. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Justin Bonds. I'm a founder of Cyber Capital. We're a cryptocurrency investment fund, so we do fundamental research trying to understand consensus algorithms, governance, politics, underlying economics, and this informs us for making good investments, essentially. I've been researching cryptocurrency full-time for about 4 years now. And to answer the question, I think there's many killer applications for blockchain technology. I think the first killer application is currency, actually. And I do not think that under its current design, Bitcoin is actually a good currency. So that would not be the best example of that. But I think maybe generalizing, what is the killer application of blockchain? I would say it's trust without central authorities. And that's an application that can be extended to many applications, and currency being the first successful application of that underlying characteristic.
Thank you. My name is Juan Ibagon. I'm Python business developer manager. Well, as I said before, I was graduated from international business in Montpellier, south of France. I have been involved in blockchain industry since 2016 as a miner, as investor, as an educator, and also an ICO evaluator. To answer the question, I think we should focus on what the blockchain technology is. I see blockchain technology as a combination of three important attributes, such as the blockchain as a database and DLT, distributed ledger technology, that lets us have different copies of all these databases around the network. And of course, open and public to everybody. So I would like to say that for me, from my point of view, the killer APP of this technology is actually an open accounting system. Actually, we can keep track of all the transactions we have ever done in this. So, of course, we can have different kind of applications, but behind, from my point of view, the open system of accounting is the real killer APP.
Thank you very much. So my next question is, I don't really understand the regulation on blockchain in Europe, but I know some in the US. So in the US, recently the SEC said under the US law, there's no such thing as utility token. So it's all security. And also we believe that the regulation is going to be tougher and tougher. So as a blockchain company or organization, or like let's just say a cryptocurrency lover, what do you think that we should cope with this regulation and also the newly formed rules on blockchain? Thank you.
Thank you. So basically, I would suggest to move to Asia. It's a huge market. I mean, probably Chinese owns the most bitcoins, and yeah, that would be my answer.
So I'm not overly concerned about the coming regulation myself. Cyber Capital's done quite a bit of research on this subject. Actually, we have a few articles talking about this, and we see the demarcation lines in terms of classification of being a security. There's a big decision coming, I believe it's May 7th, by the SEC, where they're also looking at Ethereum specifically. So my view on this is that if a cryptocurrency is sufficiently decentralized, it cannot be classified as a security. So that is where I would put the demarcation line, essentially. And I'm not sure how they're going to perceive utility tokens, but I think that the decentralization aspect essentially means that there will not be anyone to charge. There won't be any central point of failure. There will be no one to actually fill out the paperwork. So for the SEC to put down the ban hammer in such a broad way, I think that's very counterintuitive, and I don't think they would be willing to stifle innovation that much, because I think they do realize that much of that would go to places like Asia, for example. So that's my perspective on that. Regarding utility tokens, in Cyber Capital, we actually are not a huge fan of utility tokens. I feel a lot of projects are going out of their way to be utility tokens in order to avoid regulation. But actually, we're far more interested in projects that actually do have the characteristics of a security. Not necessarily are regulated as a security. So something that has a characteristic of a security means it's sufficiently decentralized, so it cannot be regulated in that way, and at the same time creates a good value proposition as an investment by both having a combination of governance control and also a good value proposition either in the form of dividends or burning or buybacks or any of these type of mechanism that actually create demand for that token if there is a high use of that token.
Well, this question is a little complicated. I actually have my own opinion regarding the regulations in all this space. I think we are in a very early stage in the blockchain world. I think in a part each government and each regulator, actor or agency has to have a different approach. It's quite important to understand that the regulators actually are approaching a totally different kind of field for them. They actually need to go back to the roots to understand what regulation is, what they need to regulate, why they need a regulator, how they want to enforce actually these regulations, and of course how you can draw agreements between different companies in blockchain and in the actual financial world. So for me, this question, I will say that the best way for a company to keep being not breaking the law should be following a minimum of the AML and KYC procedures to be compliant. This is the minimum effort a company in this field can do in a way to be friendly with the actual financial system.
So the next question is going to be a little bit tougher. I wanted to know, we see that every coin has two sides, right? So blockchain has its pros and cons. So we see a lot of good things about blockchain. What about the destruction side? I wanted to know what's the bad side of blockchain. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question, though. I'll let financial people to answer that.
Okay, that is a great question, actually. So in my view, I think cryptocurrency is a great thing, and it's something I thoroughly support. And in many ways, we're avoiding a dystopia through this technology, but at the same time, we're also building a different type of dystopia. I think Winston Churchill said that democracy is the best of the worst systems. So yeah, cryptocurrency is certainly not perfect, but it might be the best system that we have today, and this is why I support it. And to speak to that more specifically, what kind of world a cryptocurrency world would be, and one thing that strikes me very clearly is that cryptocurrency is not democratic. So more likely, especially if we're talking about proof-of-stake systems, is it approaches more of a plutocratic system, which is ruled by the wealthy or ruled by the powerful. Now, one of the reasons I'm okay with this is something I mentioned in my talk earlier, is that the difference being is that in today's system, our representatives in democratic systems or different types of political systems, they have perverted incentives acting upon them. For different reasons, their own power, their own ego, their also potentially things like lobbying, creating regulatory capture, these type of things. And the difference in cryptocurrency is actually that the participants of the network that do determine the rules or have votes within such a system do have their incentives aligned towards the public good. So even though that's certainly true, we're certainly going to see a lot of negative aspects to this as well, which is the aspect of moving to a more hyper-capitalist society, actually, more based on this kind of power. And I'll add one more thing to that, actually, is that these games of politics and influence and demagogues, this also ends up playing a bigger role as well, interestingly, within cryptocurrency, in the way that it's really a competition over the minds of people, and that does not always align neatly with truth. Yeah.
Well, I agree with the answer from Justin. I think he has a different approach that I do. I'm not so political part as Justin is, so I will give a different approach. From my side, the destruction part or the bad part, I would not call it bad part, because from my point of view, it's actually something good. I will approach it from the sense of the destruction of some industries, such as the work labor. Actually, with the blockchain, we're moving forward to a world much more automatized. What does that mean? That means that many machines are going to start to replace the actual work labor we have, and many works are going to be destroyed. Many people say that this is something bad, but from my point of view, yes, it's gonna be bad for a moment, for a period of time, but we need to look forward to the future to see what this can bring. And from my point of view, I think this disruption of works will allow the humans to actually focus on what the real value have, the way of thinking, creating new things actually. So I don't see actually blockchain as something bad. I see it as a disruption of our roots, or the way we do things, to maybe in the future trying to have a better society where we are the thinkers and not the workers as slaves.
No, I can answer a little bit too. So basically everybody is saying that blockchain could be used for money laundering or, supporting terrorism or something, bad things like, So why blockchain is bad in this case? Yeah, it's much easier to transfer money. I'm talking about cryptocurrencies, of course. But it's possible to transfer money without blockchain as well. Same way, with a low cost. So, to be honest, I don't see any bad things in the blockchain right now. The only thing which might be bad for the politician, that it's decentralized, it's not regulated, and it's not really possible to control it. So, yeah.
Oh, thank you. I'd like to share my 2 cents on this subject. Recently, I went to an event in Washington, D.C., and they are talking about digital democracy. And then they are talking about how great blockchain is, and empowering people and all, and giving individuals the power to have enough power to have impact in the community or world. But I keep thinking about one line that I learned from a TV show. So this woman being sent to the Middle East, and then she was criticizing the U.S. government for the mess that they created. So she said that you can't shove democracy down to people's throat. That's very real, because the world is not flat, because we see unevenness. We see that there are some countries are richer than others. And how much power do you really want to empower the individuals? Because when we take a step back, we wanted to create a better community for everybody. So I think that in that way, I believe the destruction side of a blockchain is that the openness, in a way, is not always too bad or too good. I think that in the beginning, we need to be careful about this empowering. And also, I think in the future, when we're ready, this will be a very good thing. And at this moment, I think that I can see the destruction of blockchain. Okay, so I am going to ask questions from the audience right now. And if you have anything you wanted to ask our three experts, please raise your hand. Okay.
Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, okay. My name is Nishal Arvind Singh. I'm also running one of my ICO. It's called DevZo. It's a decentralized logistics platform. I wanted to ask, you talk about politicians are scared of all this thing. What about the banks? Why banks throughout the world are banning people to buy or sell? There are a couple of banks in UK as well, in India, and a couple of banks throughout the world. They're actually stopping people to buy cryptocurrency. So, and also a lot of ICOs or all the cryptocurrency world is still struggling with converting cryptocurrency into fiat. So what do you think, why banks are so negative about the cryptocurrencies like that?
So banks basically find it kind of scary because that's new thing, and they were working their other way. It's something new. That's the start. But a couple of weeks ago, I was participating, and it's so funny because they started very negative, but later on, they said, okay, that actually makes sense. I mean, it's transparent. You can see things. You can save information in blockchain for 100 years. And you go back and check who made that transfer, when, why, and yeah. So they are not informed enough. That's probably the case. That's the problem. Yeah.
I'm going to mirror what you're saying here. I think it's depending on the specific people we're talking about. It's either fear, right? They feel threatened. It's also, but primarily, I think it's a lack of understanding as well. And I've actually talked to a lot of bankers that are publicly very anti-cryptocurrency and are privately invested in cryptocurrency. So we see a lot of this occurring as well. I've also had bankers ask me, so you're going to obsolete banking. What can I do to stay relevant? And I have a very solid answer actually, is that banks make great custodians. And that's originally what banks were doing in the past. That's how banks first started, and I think it makes a lot of sense to continue using banks for that purpose. Quite ironically, actually, our fund, Cyber Capital, we actually keep the majority of our cryptocurrency in deep cold storage. And what that means for us, it's words written down on a piece of paper, stored in different locations around the world in underground bank vaults. So our business definitely needs banks. I think their role will become more limited as this technology disrupts more. But that's definitely my view. I'm going to comment on what was said previously as well regarding the destructive side of cryptocurrency. I think that's, I talk a lot about how cryptocurrency brings freedom. And yes, that's the other side of the coin when it comes to freedom. A more free world is a more dangerous world. That's a bargain that I personally accept, but at the same time, the freedom of choice within cryptocurrency also means that you don't have to make that same choice either. You can live under the system that you want to live under. So just wanted to add that to the previous conversation. There you go.
Well, answering your question, I think every bank has his own approach, has its own speed to process information. There are some banks already with a lot of trading desk for Bitcoin. So personally, I believe that there's a part of control that the banks need to play with the government. They need to work together because government and monetary system has been linked for a long time. As Justin said, it's not an easy rupture of doing this so easy. And actually, as an investor, as my way of seeing it, at least I support a part of the position of Chinese government regarding ICOs and regarding trading. They don't fully understand the technology. They are right now actually using the time to understand how this technology works and how they can work with it. Owning cryptocurrency and doing OTC is not illegal in China. Actually, what is illegal is only doing ICOs, the public raising money publicly. And I think this approach is good because, well, there's a lot of people who is speculating and they don't know what they're doing. So they could actually scam really, really easy. Why? Because they don't want to do their research and they just want to get money really fast. And there was many people in China losing a lot of money. So the only way they can protect this, at least from the part of banks and governments, is that they need to control this at least. They still can do some ICOs, but as private sales. Some banks, regarding other banks, well, actually, they have the monopoly and the power of the money, and they can do as they please. And they know they have to lose the trust from our side, because actually we trust them with our money, and they supposed to give us the guarantee that we need to trust them that they're going to give us back our money. We have been seeing during the last years in many economic crises, that the money just disappears. They just call a bailout. So I think they are, of course, scared about the part because they know the trend is going to follow the cryptocurrency trend. Personally, I do my savings actually in cryptocurrency. I own no fiat, of course, but not as much as I own cryptocurrency.
Can I just add, do you mind? Can I add something? Yeah, so regarding your saving, this is my belief and my mindset. My mindset says that bank normally earn money from us, like there are 50 people in the rooms. They basically put the money in the saving accounts, and from that saving account, they basically do the term loan, the mortgage loan, or whatever they do. So imagine if this country, Netherlands, if 50% of people of Netherlands actually start moving their money outside to a different country through cryptocurrency, which is a borderless currency. So bank, this is what I believe. So bank somehow I think is scared that they actually losing the reserve ratio they have, where they make more money, and if the bank collapsed, then actually entire economic collapse. That's maybe the reason the bank are scared. I'm just my opinion.
Well, thank you very much. Due to the time, we cannot take another question. And one more question. If you have question, please ask it right now. Okay, great.
Do you feel like blockchain technology is something by the people for the people, or something by the plutocrats for the plutocrats?
Wow, be careful.
So I think in this case they're the same thing. Yeah. So it's the market mechanism might be one of the best mechanisms we have to reflect that, I think. So that's the very short answer to a very tough question there. So,
so the plutocrats.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Could be both. Is there an answer? Both?
Both is my answer.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's
the plutocrats and the people coming together
yeah,
to do something
friendly.
for everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Beautiful, huh?
It's revolutionary.
Actually, I believe that maybe you can have a beginning from the plutocrats that after some time can be moving for the people. You know, it's a really complicated question because I personally believe that the early adopters, well, right now are the ones who have all the money, are the ones who have all the Bitcoin. So actually, I imagine a big part of the distribution of Bitcoin is actually not really well done. So I imagine the market is the one who's gonna.
What would you say is well done?
It's not well done.
What would be?
Well, it would be easier to have more distributions. Right now, there are many people or many holders of Bitcoin that you can be sitting easily in 1 million Bitcoins, and well, that's quite a lot of money. If you see the twins, I don't remember the name, twins Winklevoss, yeah. Well, these guys are supposed to be the first billionaires from Bitcoin, and well, they got early, they got the money. Right now, they still have a lot of this part, so I think it's not a well-done distribution, but the market will enact so much economic activity between each token to allow to distribute the value.
I think distributing a new currency is difficult. So we have several mechanisms to do it now. Proof of work is one of the fairer ways to do it, and ICO is one way to do it. To burn tokens is another. So I don't have an issue with that per se because I can't think of a better way to do it, and obviously it's not ideal either. To add to the question of the plutocrats having a lot of power under such a system, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier, which is essentially the plutocrats will have incentives acting upon them to do what is in the best interest of the masses. So money for the people, by the people. I'll stand by that one.
Yes.
All right.
All right. Okay, so this is the end of our event. Thank you very much for staying here with us. And if you have any other questions, we can talk to. You can come and talk to the speakers in a private way. Thank you very much.